Welcome back to U.S. Farm Report this weekend. Sean Hackett as well as Mike North joining us to take a deep dive into what to expect for what could be a pretty eventful week next week with the markets. Sean, I want to start with you because what acreage numbers is it that you think the markets are trading? What would be a surprise and what can the markets absorb at this point from USDA?
I think most people are thinking it's going to be something closer to 95. I think if we printed a 96 number, that would be surprise, and the market would have to probably trade lower on that. That's kind of the working numbers I'm going with as to what the market is already built in to the current price of corn.
Yeah, Mike, do you agree with that?
I would. And, anecdotally, as I travel the country, I find a lot of producers embracing more corn. And so to come out higher than what the USDA Farm Forum had projected in February would not be a real shock to me. And I think even in this last day, you're seeing the market settling into what could be a larger number.
Yeah, so we saw USDA print a 94 million number on corn out of that, out of their forum, but that was not survey based. This one is survey based. And so, Sean, with soybeans, do you think that one could produce some surprises?
I do, and I think that the market, if you're looking at soybeans, they've been holding in there. We're starting to get some upside today. I think the market is starting to get a little worried about a low number there, and maybe the market having to reprice the soybean market relative to corn, higher here to maybe get those numbers back into balance by the time we get to the June acreage report. So very interesting action in soybeans the last few days and how it's trading relative to corn and wheat.
Let's get into that a little bit, Mike, because when you look at prices, we have had quite a bit of volatility, but it seems like the markets, the prices that we're trading here are just range bound.
Right. They're somewhat locked in. And reality is we're going to play that corn bean relationship at least until we can get the Corn Belt putting seed in the ground. But, as you talk about acres on beans, I think you could ultimately see an even higher number on beans potentially, especially if we're able to take more acres away from cotton in the South to get us to that higher corn number. So, I think as you talk about price, it's going to be an interesting day on Monday when the numbers actually show. But all the way around, I think there could actually be a little bit of a reverse surprise on beans for what the market's trading right now.
Yeah, and we cannot take bigger acreage. When you look at the demand picture right now with soybeans and some of that, it does not seem like we could handle higher acres than what USDA has already printed. But Sean, what is it going to take to really move these markets? We've been range bound. We're talking about acreage estimates. What is it going to take to get these markets energized and moved again?
Beyond reaction to next week's reports and tariffs, which I think is dialed in to a large extent, it still comes down to Mother Nature this time of the year. Is the weather going to allow the acres that the planting intentions report suggests to get planted, or is the weather going to allow a different scenario? And because we're expecting a very cold, late frost risk growing, planting season here, we think we're going to quickly have to dial back corn acres, dial up soybean acres. And I think that's going to be what gets this market changed a little bit, especially for winter wheat as it comes out of dormancy. We need weather to start really getting involved here to get the markets off dead center.
Mike, what about on the demand front? Because corn demand has been pretty good. Do you think USDA has an accurate projection penciled in right now? And if they do make changes, when do you think that's even going to happen?
Well, they're dragging their feet to be sure. If we go by the numbers, we're about 180 million bushels short of where we should be if we're keeping in lockstep with what is actually leaving the country. But I think they're playing it a little bit more cautiously because we do have tariff talks in play, and we are moving into that time of the year when we seasonally start to slow down from both a commitment and export standpoint. So we could easily raise exports on the balance sheet, but my bet is they won't touch that until we get deeper in the weeds on the tariff conversation to know absolutely what kind of retaliation we might see from Mexico, how the buyers around the world are, responding to us over a period of time where they can, absolutely gauge interest.
Well, it could be a major week next week. Not only do we have the acreage report, prospective plantings report from USDA on Monday, but we also have the big tariff day. That's April 2nd. And we will see if President Trump follows through on some of those threats. So could it have a bigger impact than last time, than early March? That's what we're going to ask Sean and Mike next.